Okay, so this was quite the character development episode for Victor. So we start off with Victor and Oz, mostly Oz, wanting to go into business with Sophia. Now, they're back in his apartment, waiting for Sophia. Sophia comes at the same time that Sal Maroni calls Oz. So Oz goes into his bedroom to take the call, and Victor is stuck having to entertain Sophia, who he's freaking out about because she's the hangman. And Oz even said, "You can't believe everything you hear," which tells you that whatever Sophia did to get put in Arkham wasn't what people think. Now, she did later say that to Oz that he ratted her out to her father. So she obviously did something. I mean, she's not a complete innocent angel. She is, and we saw that in the first episode where she's willing to kill someone just because. But at the same time, I'm questioning what happened that if she got this reputation, she ended up in Arkham. Because it's sounding like more and more like she didn't do what people think she did. And Oz knows it. But anyway, so he can't even get a lighter to work. Now, I can understand matchsticks. Those are a bit of a funky deal. Now, I've never used a regular lighter. I've only used a campfire lighter. And yes, indeed, they don't always work on the first try. So maybe this is the same thing. And maybe it could be nerves, because we hear that Victor is easily nervous. The only time we heard him having a conversation up to this point without stuttering was when he was talking to his girlfriend. Because it started off, I forgot about this, it started off as a flashback to when they went onto the rooftop and we meet Calvin. I assume Calvin is the same guy that Sophia killed, because he was willing to rat out Oz. So I'm thinking that's the same kid. But anyway, we see him talking to his family, and then we see the explosions. They initially think it's part of the show because of the new mayor being inaugurated. And no. It is the Riddler flooding this part of Gotham. Now, why did he choose the poorest part of Gotham to put underwater? You'd think that he would go for the rich part, because, he seems to have a problem with people who got into their positions corruptly. So don't you think you'd want to go after the rich part? Especially since he has a problem with Bruce Wayne and his family. You'd think he would go for that. But anyway, Riddler is criminally insane, so can't exactly ascribe rational thought to him. But anyway, so we see the water heading down towards their apartment block. And Victor even attempts to call his family to warn them what's happening. Now, later on, his girlfriend says, I think it's Grisilla, she says both our families are dead. I wonder if that's going to be a twist at the end of this season, that it's going to turn out that they aren't dead, or at least not all of them. So, like I said, then we see Oz and going out with Sophia. Now, initially, Victor was supposed to come with them, but Sophia didn't want him. Now, I don't know if she was worried about having people there she doesn't know, which, can't blame her. She's probably super paranoid. I mean, her own family pushed her out because I don't know if they truly think that she's psycho, or if it's just simply because of sexism. It could be a combination of the two. But either way, it makes sense that she'd be very careful about who she divulges information to. So they go to where she has her drugs, and it says Arkham State Hospital, Arkham Asylum. And Oz is shocked because he's like, wait, I thought that this was Berto's thing. And she's like, I'm sure you did. And obviously she doesn't trust him still. But now, what was growing on those mushrooms looked like blood to me. But apparently they're spores, and apparently they give you a high. Because at first Oz is like, really? Mushrooms? I know you've been in there for 10 years, but... And I'm thinking, I know that this is an alternate universe, and who knows how, what happened when, but shrooms have been around for more than 10 years. Magic mushrooms have been around since probably the 60s. At least. So, Oz is less than impressed until Sophia convinces him that this is different. This is a high like you've never had. And which makes you question, how do you know this? Have you seen this? Which we find out later is because they gave it to the inmates so they're docile and happy and not giving the staff grief. Which, on the one hand, you can understand because these are a bunch of dangerous people, dangerous criminals who happen to also be bonkers. But at the same time, really? But Arkham has been shown to be not a good place. So, they talk about, okay, we need someone to finance this operation. So they go to the Triad, which they're not thrilled to see Oz. They pat him down to make sure he doesn't have any weapons. And when they turn to Sophia, she just, tells them where the weapon is, where they can grab the weapon, which makes sense. I mean, you never know if this guy is going to be handsy with her or if he's just going to do your straight up search. I mean, let's face it, you've seen this in shows before and movies of men who take advantage of the situation of patting down a woman to feel her up. So, can't blame her for saying, yeah, this is where it is. And then they promptly use, I don't know if it was her gun or his gun, or if the guy had his own gun. They pointed at Oz. Because in this episode, everybody hates Oz. And talking about how he never paid them for something. I can't remember what it was that they were in business for. And so Oz tells him about this drug. And by the looks of Sophia, Oz came up with Bliss on the fly. Because Sophia gave him a look like, okay, we'll run with that. As opposed to her expecting that. So they leave, and but only after they are told that they have to find someone to vouch for them. Because Sophia Falcone is obviously, she needs proof that she's doing the family's work as opposed to going off on her own and possibly trying to usurp Luca. So she brings up, or Oz does, one of them brings up Johnny. And they do that because he's apparently a cousin of her mother's. And so now they have to get Johnny to call and vouch for this operation. Now, Johnny's not a horrible guy. He had, when he found Sophia sneaking back in, he was like, you know what? Just go to Italy or don't, and I'll just tell Luca you went there. So obviously he wants her out of the way, but he also is willing to let it slide that it doesn't have to be Italy. It could be literally anywhere. Just go. So Victor and Oz are talking. Before I go there, back up. First, Victor decides to call his girlfriend over, and I'm just thinking, oh boy, this, depending on what they end up doing, Oz might find out, and he might freak out. Because, just like Sophia, I'm sure he doesn't want some strange person in his apartment. So, he sees his girlfriend. She asks him about Calvin. And this is why I think, besides that the flashback sort of kind of looked like the same guy, but she said he also disappeared at the same time Victor did. So I'm thinking that it was Calvin that Sophia killed. And she also, like I said, pointed out that both her families are dead. And she's going off to California, and she wants Victor to go away with her. Now, this is right after Oz gives him $1,000. He's willing to give him $1,000 a week just to be his driver. And he gives some of that money to Grisilla so she can buy herself a ticket to get out, do something nice, and also get him a ticket. Because he decided he's going to go with her. Because he's like, I'm in some crazy shit. He's a gangster. And she's like, well, that's all the more reason why you should run away with me. Because then he can't find you and kill you because of the things you know. And, he's still scared. Now, Grisella, again, is the only time so far that he has been able to speak without a stutter. And anybody who knows anything about stuttering, it is because of nerves. Now, granted, that some people suggested started when children are learning to speak and the parent is always correcting them and doing this and doing that. And it's just they develop nerves about talking, and so they stutter. Obviously, with Victor, it's just nerves. Because when he's with his girlfriend, not a hint of a stutter. And, now, so then Oz and Victor are in a nice French restaurant. And Oz gets Victor to talk about his family, his father, how he was a mechanic, but his passion was being a chef, that he was such a good cook. And he mentioned his mom. I assume that the girl who was in that apartment was his sister. No mention of her. So, either this is foreshadowing that the parents survive and the sister does not, or vice versa. But I'm leaning towards the parents survived the flooding. But the entire time he's excitedly telling Oz about his family. No hint of a stutter. So it's obviously a nervous twitch type thing. He stutters when he's nervous. So, either that or there are certain scenes where people forget he's supposed to be stuttering. But I'm leaning towards this being real world-ish because, again, Mel Tillis, whenever he sang, no hint of a stutter. His stuttering got better as his career went on. Joe Biden, you can tell when he's freaking nervous about giving a speech. He stutters. So, it is a nervous thing. So they're in this restaurant. Oh, before I forget. While Sophia and Oz were talking to the triad, Victor is sitting in the car with a bag of these drugs. And a cop pulls in because they're in a loading zone. And my first response is, dude, you're working for someone who's shady. And they're doing shady shit. Why are you parking illegally? I mean, why cause yourself that grief? Just park legally, and then you don't even have to worry about the cop busting you and potentially finding the drugs. It's really that simple. And I can't put all the blame on Victor because Oz has eyes. He knows where they parked. But anyway, so Victor is telling him about his encounter with the cop, how the cop found all this money on him. He's like, how did you end up with all this money? Which, that is a legit question. You don't have many people carrying that much money. And I don't know how much money he still had. I at first thought he gave all of it to Grisella. But he obviously had some left, and he's just like, I don't have any money. And the cop realizes that he's paying him off, and it's like, okay, you're right, see ya. And Oz loved it. He absolutely loved it and really thinks highly of Victor, even though sometimes you question that. Like when the waiter um, finished his sentence for him when he said what he's having. Because he's nervous because he obviously didn't really look at the menu. And Oz read him the riot act for not letting him finish because he understands the guy has a stutter. It's not going to help him if you finish his sentence. You just patiently wait for him to finish. Even that girl that he tried to, one of the prostitutes that he tried to set Victor up with, she even understood that, you know? So it has nothing to do with, one person being hoity-toity in a fancy establishment, possibly better educated or whatever. It's about empathy. And they're really trying to show the difference between the people who have to scrape by and those who aren't necessarily in that situation, that they're privileged. I mean, even with Sophia, she looks down on Victor. Oz does not look down on Victor, even though he's done well for himself. Granted, he had to throw Sophia under the bus and run it over a few times, but he did well for himself. So then we find out why they're at this fancy schmancy restaurant. And the entire time, even in the car and in the restaurant, you can see that Victor is trying to wait for his moment to tell Oz he's leaving because he wants to be with his girlfriend. And it just never happens because as understanding as Oz is and how he's trying to help Victor and stand up for Victor, at the same time he comes up with his own reasons for why Victor looks uneasy, or he just completely ignores the unease on Victor's face. So it's not like he's completely attuned to what Victor's going through, and he really, really, truly cares about Victor, even though he probably does a little, because he probably sees a lot of himself in Victor, because here is this kid with a handicap, even if it isn't a physical one. He still has a speech impediment, so a handicap. So he sees a lot of himself in Victor. But he still is a narcissist, and he still doesn't catch nearly enough about what the heck is going on with Victor, which is what sets him off later on. But we'll get to that. So, they come up with this plan. Adelia is Luca's wife, who Johnny is screwing, literally. So Oz makes a deal with her, and based on the way she quickly rushed out of there when they walked in on them, I'm going to say that she told them when they're meeting, but she probably didn't expect them to walk in the middle of the act. So, they're trying to convince Johnny to back their venture, to call these guys and tell them that this is legit. And of course, at first he's like, Sophia, why are you working with him after what he's done to you? And you can see on Sophia's face, she's like, I know what I'm doing. Why does everyone treat me like I'm an idiot? I know what's going on. So even though she's working with Oz, and she even said Oz is working for her. So she is not, and I'm sure that that's how she sees it. That she's the Falcone and he isn't, so of course she has the power. So I'm sure that's how she sees it. But also the fact that she's not a freaking moron. She knows what Oz did to her, and she's not going to just forget it. So Oz does what Oz does. I honestly thought he was going to kill Johnny. And Sophia was just standing there. So either A, she knew that he wasn't going to kill him, or she honestly didn't care. It could go either way. And so obviously it worked because they have this party at the Iceberg Lounge. Victor is supposed to be the bagman, literally, going around while the girls sell the drugs, and whenever they need more, they give him the money and he'll give them more drugs to sell. And it's going well. Sophia gives a nice pitch. She even mentions your dad was a psychologist, so he understands the human need for this and that. I can't remember what exactly she said. And that this is why they gave them the drug at Arkham. So that was a mic drop that, oh, that's how come she's familiar with Bliss. Because she was forced to take it. So she had also spoken with Oz and asked him, was it worth ratting me out? Which is why I think she did something. Now, it probably wasn't anything good, but it probably wasn't as bad as people are making it out to be. Because she even said, I'm not the hangman. And Oz said that you can't believe everything you read. So, something happened. Oz told Carmine. And either somehow the story became more fantastical than it really was, or Carmine made a cover story to explain why he stuck his kid in Arkham. And even Oz was claiming, I had no idea he was going to do that to his own kid. Now, whether he actually believes that, and he probably does, because he's not a complete monster. But at the same time. So, Victor, after all this takes place, Victor is walking through, and then he has a serious case of PTSD. I don't know if there was a loud pop from a champagne bottle or what happened, but he suddenly has this PTSD of the night when Riddler flooded the streets of Crown Point. Now, and of course he drops all the drugs, and this girl who, again, Oz was earlier trying to set him up with, she was like, what the hell's wrong with you? You dropped everything. Completely unaware of the fact that he's having a PTSD episode. And so then he runs into the bathroom with the bag, and he looks at his phone, and Grisilla is like, the bus is going to leave soon, where are you? So he's still thinking about whether he's going to stay or go. And Oz comes in to check on Victor, and he sees the phone, because actually he sees Victor holding the phone, and of course he's worried about what's going on. Yeah, and because at first he's happy that they made the sale, they made the deal. And he looks at the phone and he goes off. And he's like, why, if you want to leave, fine. Why didn't you just say something? And then Victor was, I think he was trying to get something out. But Oz figured out that Victor was worried about getting killed for leaving. And Oz is like, I would not do that to you. Even though he's, role playing what it is Victor thinks that he was going to do. And that hurt him more than Victor wanting to leave. The idea that Victor thought so little of him that Oz would try to kill him simply for wanting to leave. So Victor runs out and takes Oz's car, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, how is Oz going to get home? Of course, the answer is Victor goes to the bus stop and watches his girlfriend get on the bus and leave. Because he's decided that, like Oz said, he can make something of himself here. He's making good money. I mean, $1,000 a week, are you kidding? He's making good money, and he could potentially become a bigwig. Become someone that people look up to. So he then turns around to go back. And as that's happening, Nadia Maroney, as Oz and Sophia are having a heart-to-heart where Oz was like, I'm sorry about what happened to you. I did not expect you to be sent to Arkham, but I do not regret the fact that I've become someone. Which Sophia was like, wow. And he's like, I care about you. I have always cared about you. But, I still don't regret that I have this stuff. I just feel bad that I had to screw you over to do it. Again, implying that whatever happened was not what people think. Now, as this is happening, like I said, Nadia Maroney, the Maroneys, come to go after Oz. Apparently they're watching him, and they're not very happy with what he's done. So, and Sophia is standing right there. So, Victor is just, calmly humming along, driving back to, rejoin Oz until he sees a gun pointed at Oz's head. So he guns it, and the guy gets pancaked against their van. So, but unfortunately, he ends up hurting himself. I mean, he's bleeding from the nose, he's bleeding from the forehead. And this is what I mean about Oz is showing some, that he cares a little bit about Victor, but not enough because, dude, not, oh my God, we've got to get you fixed up because you're bleeding once we get out of here. No, it's just, that was great. Now let's get out of here. What about Sophia? Fuck her. After he just got done telling her how much he cares about her and how much she means to him, and at the first sign of danger, he's like, let's just abandon her. I mean, she's standing right there. How hard would it have been to grab her and have her get into the back seat? Actually, if Sophia was even remotely smart, she would have done that already. But she was probably in shock over hearing about the Maroneys. And I'm sure Nadia, said stuff to her, or said stuff to Oz to make her realize that he's the inside man. He's the one who told them about the drops operation. and all that. So probably Sophia would rather, take her chances with the Maronis, or possibly just run back into the Iceberg Lounge, one of the two. So that's how it ends. So I'm really curious I'm still worried about Victor not surviving the season. But it's also possible that, he could end up being a big force in Gotham. Or he could, like I said, do a reverse Jason Todd, that he starts off as, helping a gangster and then becomes this lily white force of good. Anything is possible. But yeah, this was, even though the scenes between Oz and Sophia and Victor were about 50-50. Character-wise, you learned a lot more about Victor. You learned a little bit about Sophia, but only enough to wonder what the hell happened that got her sent to Arkham. Because, again, the fact that she says she's not the Hangman, Oz pretty much backs her up on that. It's not like it's just some psycho saying, oh, I'm not a psycho. Oz is backing her up on this. So, obviously, something happened. She did something. But at the same time, it wasn't as bad as what people think. Now, whether it's as bad as Carmine thought, who knows? Maybe he thought that he was, doing his daughter a favor by making these fantastical tales about her. I don't know. All I know is she's not a fan of her father because, he sent her to Arkham and she was there for 10 years. So, yeah, I wouldn't be thrilled with my father if I was wrongly sent to Arkham either. So we learned a little bit, but it's still, okay, what exactly happened with her that she got sent to Arkham? And the fact that the family seems to believe this. So it's like, okay, seriously, what happened, and why does everyone believe the worst of Sophia? And again, it could be that she did something really bad. But based on the way Oz is acting, maybe not. I'm not saying she did something good, but it definitely wasn't as bad as what people think. Let's see, what else is there? Actually, I don't mind that Godzilla is out of the picture. I hope he doesn't then, hook up with this other girl. Because people who've watched my channel know how much I love romance. If it's done well, then I'm fine with it. But for the most part, no. So, I hope that doesn't happen. She does seem to genuinely like Victor, but I don't know. So, and Eve obviously doesn't like Sophia, because as soon as Sophia showed up, I have to go powder my nose. So yeah. Yeah, lots of moving pieces. It's going to be very interesting to see. I don't know how many episodes this is. I don't know if it's just an 8-episode season. I really don't know. But, yeah. I'm really curious what happens the rest of the season. Because this is the first episode where Oz doesn't have to come up with a backup to the backup plan. Because the past few episodes, things just Actually, the whole start of this show was because things went south very quickly, which is him killing Alberto, when it was just a matter of he has no emotional control. So, the very beginning of this show was him having to talk his way out of whatever mess he's in because his plans didn't go the way he wanted. So yeah, it's refreshing that things went to plan. Of course, that makes me wonder what's going to happen next episode. I mean, obviously, the Maronis did find him, but he's not the one who got himself out of it. Victor did. So hopefully this will be a turn in their relationship. Maybe Oz won't be quite as harsh. But then again, if you see the way his mother treats him, you can see why he does that. You know, he probably thinks it's perfectly normal for someone to be overly harsh to their kid. Who knows? I believe I covered everything in this episode. The only thing is, who is Victor going to ultimately be? If he's going to be someone from the comics, or if he's just going to remain original character to the show. So that's a question for Victor. So yeah, I think I covered everything now. So with that, I will see you guys in the next episode.